Hello and welcome to Bucky's Beginner Guides for Asker. I'm this guy, and today we're going over the Gatherer. The Gatherer is a vital part of your village infrastructure throughout your playthrough, whether it's in the early game as a source of flax and food for your fledgling village, or in the later game when it becomes all about the eggs. All the eggs, all the time. At least until we get a chicken coop, right devs? Now apparently, unfortunately and also rather tragically, you cannot harvest nests or vegetables with bombs for some silly reason. This is clearly an oversight, but don't worry, I've already put in a ticket. Located in the Basic Structures tab of your build menu, the Gatherer comes in 3 tiers: the pit, the hut, and the house. The Gatherer's pit is the most basic version of this building and will be among the first buildings you construct in a playthrough. It is built using regular long sticks, and a little bit of rope. Rope is made from flax and can be crafted either 1 at a time or 5 at a time from the Materials tab of your build menu, and those sticks can be gathered from any nearby dwarf spruce. I would instead recommend chopping down the young furs first. I would instead recommend chopping down any nearby young firs first, as not only do they drop more sticks, they'll also drop the long sticks you'll be needing. Good God, that was difficult to say. Once built, you can assign a single Kyle to the Gatherer's pit, who will then go about their day or night gathering everything that is both in season and on their task list. More on seasons and the task list in a minute though. In order to upgrade your Gatherer's pit into a Gatherer's hut, you are going to need a supply of regular logs, which will require that you've built the workshop and then crafted yourself a large stone axe. If you haven't already, then go ahead and check out my Woodcutter's Beginner Guide to learn all about this. Once you have the Gatherer's hut up and running, you'll be able to assign up to 2 Kyles here, and the building comes with some additional storage. There are no new tasks though, but unlike the Stonecutter where that felt a little bit lackluster, it's not so terrible with the Gatherer since there is so much to gather all year round anyway. To upgrade your Gatherer's hut into the Gatherer's house requires a lot more legwork, as you are going to need to unlock a whole bunch of mid-game buildings as well as unlocking and forging iron tools. In short, these higher tier buildings are built using wooden posts, beams, shafts, and planks, which themselves are made by harvesting hardwood from birch trees using an iron axe and then refining that hardwood at the carpenter, also using iron axes or a draw knife. That whole process is definitely outside the scope of this beginner's guide, but don't worry, this series will eventually cover the workshop and all of the extensions. So actually, why not give that subscribe button a good old slap so you see when they're released. Once built, the Gatherer's house opens up a 3rd workplace for even more Kyle fun and a whole bunch more storage. Again, no new tasks, but maybe in the future, and I'll touch on that in a minute. Now, before we move on to villager perks and my tips and tricks, let's just quickly go over these gathering tasks. Now, obviously, this task list is quite large because it does include, pretty much everything you can gather, such as beets, berries, Battlestar Galactica, cabbage, carrots, garlic, onions, the 3 flavors of mushrooms, snot wallets, eggs, and feathers. Oh, yeah, and fibers, obviously. And then, on top of all of that, the seeds that drop along with most of these. Pine cones and reed seeds are a little bit weird because gatherers don't actually go out and gather reeds or dwarf spruce, which is where they come from, which I feel is a bit of a missed opportunity, but at least they'll go around and pick up all of the reed seeds and pine cones that you drop on the floor because, let's be honest, you, like me, are too lazy to put them away. And another thing to note about the gathering tasks is a lot of these are dependent on either the season or the weather, or in the case of one special item, both. More on that one in a second though. So here is a graphic that editor Bucky has put together, and honestly, top notch, top effort, good job editor Bucky, you deserve a raise. I'm not going to give one to you though, but you do deserve it. And I'm not going to read through these at all because it will take too long, but you can just pause the video on the season that you want information for. And also for our Australian friends, we have a version for you. Look, editor Bucky really did go the extra mile by making 2 completely different, but still somehow strikingly similar graphs for different parts of the world. Just the level of dedication he has should be rewarded. Again, I'm not going to, but it should be. And one more note for all of the extra notes that I've given on this subject. When it comes to mushrooms and grey mushrooms, they will only spawn when it rains, and our mystery item was the yellow mushroom, which only spawns in the fall when it rains. Really fussy mushroom, that one. And yet another thing to know, mushrooms do not spawn in the winter because in Asker it doesn't rain in the winter. That's called snow. Birds' nests follow yet another set of rules. They will spawn at the beginning of spring, at the beginning of summer, and the beginning of autumn, and then in winter they will be destroyed. But they will drop the contents in them. I think it's still that way, so you can still go out and get them, but they're destroyed in the winter. So just bear that in mind. Cheese and pies are going to be a little bit difficult to make in the winter. And this is why I say gatherers never lose their importance, because you do want to make sure you can gather everything you possibly can before winter hits and you don't get these items anymore. And the last thing I want to say on the topic of the gatherer's hut, maybe a little bit of a soapbox like I usually get to at this point of the beginner's guide videos. But I think it would make a lot of sense if the gatherer's house didn't just come with extra storage and unlocking other buildings, but rather it came with the ability to grow mushrooms year round, independent of the weather, because much like the stonecutter, upgrading to the gatherer's house just feels a little bit lackluster since it is just extra storage and unlocking other, more useful buildings. Having the gatherer's house come with a cellar and a new task for growing mushrooms would definitely go a long way towards making it feel more rewarding to build. And I'm not going to mention the chicken coop again. Besides the fact that I just mentioned the chicken coop again. And that wraps up everything you probably need to know about the gatherer. Now let's go over my favorite perks, tips and tricks to help make your gathering a little bit easier. To start off with, keep an eye out for the Forager's Instinct perk because it's literally called Forager's Instinct, and if you don't have at least one gatherer with this perk, then the game is going to leave you. I mean, honestly, with the way you're behaving, the disrespect. Do better. Villagers with the Forager's Instinct perk gain additional proficiency in gathering, which does speed up their leveling and in turn makes them gather much more quickly. Harvest Blessing also increases gathering proficiency, but by a lesser amount and only in the fall. I don't actually know if those two stack though, because out of all my saves and all my villagers, not one had both of these perks, but do let me know if you do and if they stack. Night Shadow is worth having on at least one of your gatherers because villagers with this perk do not mind working at night. Having at least one gatherer with this perk then allows for 24-hour round-the-clock gathering, which is super helpful, especially if it starts raining at night. You'll be able to gather up all of those mushrooms much faster. Also, it's a good idea to keep an eye out for some cold resistance perks such as Nocturnal or Winter Resilience. I do like to recommend these as gatherers are often running all over the island, and if a blizzard hits, they could find themselves in a very bad situation without much room for error. So having some built-in cold resistance can help them stay out longer and get home safely. Along this same line of thinking, Snowstrider and Stout Constitution could be useful because Snowstrider will allow your gatherers an easier time moving around in the snow, and Stout Constitution helps reduce the chances of them getting the dreaded sore throat debuff, which is a massive pain in the ass because it drastically reduces stamina regeneration. And finally, if you want to level yours or your villager's gathering skill quickly and with minimal effort, then go ahead and build the Air Runestone and then assign a shaman to it. The buff they give out will give you and your villagers 3-star gathering proficiency. You can further power level your own gathering skill by repeatedly gathering water from any nearby wells when you have this buff going, though do make sure you have a bathroom nearby because all that water has to go somewhere. For more information on how to unlock the various runestones and what their buffs do, then check out my dedicated runestone guide. And that's all for this beginner's guide. Be sure to check out my other guides or come and join me in whatever shenanigans I'm currently up to by clicking on one of the videos on your screen now. Thank you so much for watching. If you feel like you've learned something or you've enjoyed your time here, then please consider grabbing a sub, dropping a like or leaving a comment, and I'll see you next time. Cheerio.